Good evening, good afternoon, good morning again. You're here at another episode of In Conservation With. My name is David Lindo, and I'm really quite excited as usual, even more so maybe today, to have Harriet Mead here to talk about her work and her life. Now, I'm not sure how many of you actually know about Harriet. I mean, she's got a massive biog here. I mean, she's an award-winning sculptor. I mean, that's the main thing you need to know. And I love the idea that she uses objects to create welded sculptures.
Oh dear.
Is that someone's noise there? But anyway, so that's what you do. But let's just kind of go back in history. I mean, you and I have a history in that I've known you.
Can't hear you.
Who's that, Harriet? Can you not hear me, Harriet? Harriet?
Yeah, I can't hear you. I can hear you a tiny bit and then you go away again.
Well, don't worry, I'm saying good things about you. Harriet, can you hear me now? Can you hear me, Harriet? This is the wonders of modern technology here, because we're in Harriet's workspace, and obviously the internet connection in the workspace. Amazing.
Sure.
And the thing was, we were talking perfectly for the previous half an hour. Everyone else can hear me fine. You, Harriet, and you're the most important person to hear me. Can you hear me? Okay, what I might have to ask Harriet to do is maybe to come back.
I'll kick you in the shins next time I see you.
Say again? Can you hear me now?
For ages. That's the first time I've heard you for ages. Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, good.
Nope,
good.
You've gone.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Good, okay. I was just saying, Harriet, how amazing you were.
Thank you.
We've known each other for some time. I mean, I used to work at the British Trust for Ornithology way back in the late 90s. And I think that's where we met. In fact, I met you through your father, the very, very, very famous and eminent Chris Mead. Was your father a main influence? This is a bit of a stupid question, but was he one of a main influence when it came to appreciation of natural history?
Yes, I mean, of course he was. Anybody who knew him or saw him on the media, you could tell he had a effervescence about him, a huge personality and a huge passion for wildlife and the natural world. But actually, Mum was equally, she was a quieter presence, but her botanical knowledge and just general knowledge and very inquiring mind. And I think I'm one of three daughters. I'm the middle one. And all three of us have come out with a very strong love of the natural world, whether it's insects or birds or plants or mammals or whatever.
What was your earliest...
I can't hear you. Oh, there you go.
What was your earliest memories when it came to natural history?
I can't even think. I mean, we had a very unusual household. As you can imagine, Dad was just obsessed. He was a very well-known bird ringer. So all his life, I mean, I don't know whether it's correct, but when he died, people were saying he'd overseen 250,000 birds being ringed, of which a large proportion he'd done himself. So, you know, he did the sand marting inquiry in the 1960s before any of us were born. So, you know, where does it start? I mean, when's the first time you remember going in, you know, seeing a bee or something? I don't know. I mean, I do remember we had some very unusual holidays. We didn't really have holidays much, but they were always kind of centered around projects that Dad wanted to do. So the only foreign holidays we ever had, we went to Mallorca once, and that's because he was going to go there to ring birds. and we went to the Netherlands as well. I think I was about 7 or something then, and there again we went because of bird ringing. We went to the Channel Islands because of bird ringing and birding, but it just goes to show this network of people who are friendly and welcoming, and the passion that's shared amongst this group. So yeah, you know, happiest memories, just being woken up to go and see frogs spawning and all these kind of things. Just that enthusiasm from both parents just to go and see things.
That's incredible. I wish I had that kind of influence when I was a kid, because that sounds totally idyllic. But you say you're not a birder. I don't believe you, because we've been talking prior to going live, as it were, and you were saying to me that you can often recognise the birds calling and stuff. I mean, you were telling me about walking in the fields and hearing migrants. Can you tell us again?
Well, I couldn't hear the entire question, but I've got the gist of it. But yeah, I think to have a little bit of knowledge about bird song, it gives you kind of a 3D view. You can't always see birds, but sometimes just that slight call, it's like someone calling their name. You just suddenly get that feeling. I haven't heard that for a while. So you know it's a migrant, or you think, oh, that's an unusual call. Is it just a contact call of something? And it makes you look harder. And I think it's certainly not a skill I've particularly got, but it's just that unfamiliar that just brings you up short. You don't realise how much you're taking in all the time. And I think often people think I'm being rude, because if I'm stood outside with them, I'm sure everyone thinks you're being rude, David, because you're looking up in the sky, and I'm the same. I'm looking over people's shoulders and things, you know. Oh, what was that? You know, just have a little look, see what it's them. But we had a broad-bordered bee hawk moth here last week, and I first saw it and thought it was a hummingbird hawk moth. But actually, my other half, Josie, was brilliant. He said, no, it's not. And I thought, yes, no, it's not. It's the wrong colours. And we looked closely, and it was a broad-bordered bee hawk moth, which was fantastic. And it's since visited twice more. So yeah, it's all about taking in your surroundings and taking a delight in it and an interest. And I think the labelling of them, the understanding of them, and the knowing what it was, I find I really enjoy. Actually, I don't have a list, but I like to know a little bit more about it. And I think, you know, Dad's been dead 17 years now, and we lost Mum over 4 years ago now. And I still miss being able to ask them things. I know we've got apps and Google and goodness knows what else, but yeah, they were my encyclopedias, and us girls, we used to ask questions when we were go to bed. And Mum would be trying to leave the room, but we'd ask her another question. She'd be going off and getting a book and looking it up, and you know, just to find out more for us. And yeah, that was a brilliant influence. So privileged, really were.
Yeah, because I remember your father. He really was, as you said, an encyclopedia, walking encyclopedia.
Oh, I can't.
Everyone respected him. So that was really a good influence on me as well when I worked with him for 2 years when I was at the British Trust for Ornithology. I'm going to talk about your work slightly now. You make unique sculptures that are made from old tools and agricultural scrap, and some are in museums, private collections around the world now. When did that all start? Where did that spark come from? When did you know that you were an artist? You know, when did you have that kind of feeling that you could be doing stuff like this?
Well, it's going to sound really sort of naive, conceited combination, but I always knew I wanted to be an artist, and I'm just extraordinarily fortunate. I mean, literally since I was knee high, I always wanted to be an artist. And part of that mad family that we were in, it just didn't seem that was an impossibility, you know. And I'm so lucky. I worked at the BTO, the British Trust for Ornithology. I never had a job interview there. I just went to help with some filing. But of course, because I knew Latin names of birds and I understood about bird ringing, and I was filing all the ringing schedules, which was the data sheets from all the bird ringers from all over the place that had been ringing all these different birds. I stayed there for 5 years part-time. But I've never had a job interview in my life, and I'm 50. So, I mean, how lucky am I? But when it came to making sculptures, I don't know, I think I have a 3D mind. I think I so much prefer working. Mum used to let us play with plasticine in the bedrooms. I mean, the carpets were absolutely ruined. Always making things, you know, I put sewing machine needle through my finger when I was 7 or 8. Mum let us use, and so I always knew I wanted to make sculpture. It was only when I went to art college, and I got let loose on different bits of equipment, and I just knew that welding was for me, because there's an extraordinary strength in attaching metal together. I don't know if you can see this. Oh, that's a good sound effect. But this is a running hare that I've just been working on, and it's running, but it's only attached by one little point on that shovel. Now, you wouldn't really be able to do that. You certainly couldn't do that in wood. If you had that cast into bronze, they would have to strengthen it, because the tensile strength of bronze isn't strong enough to hold that weight of the rest of the hair up. I'm sure we can all cast our minds back, excuse the pun, to bronzes that have been cast with little bunches of plants and things underneath the back legs of the running hare to help support it, so you've got that structure. So welding was just wonderful. Of course, once you start welding, you're looking for things that are ferrous, i.e. rust well. So I suppose it was quite a natural using sheet steel with some bound objects. Whereas now, for the last, I don't know how many years, I've done nothing but, so everything I make is made entirely of old tools. So there's no fresh steel in them at all.
Okay.
Well, that's the lurcher going now. He's left the building.
One thing you may not know, my dad was a welder.
Oh, really?
He trained as
hang on, you've disappeared.
I'm here.
Oh, there you go, back again.
He was a welder, so I kind of, when you talk about welding, I know all about the. Well, at least I watched him weld. That's about it, really. But can you kind of talk us through? I mean,
he'd probably think my welding was rubbish.
What I'd like to do is ask you to show us kind of your process, if you can. You know, from a bit of scrap metal to something that kind of looks like something. And then after that, maybe I can show some images of your work on the PowerPoint. So can you kind of take us from the very beginning? You've got a piece of scrap metal. What do you kind of think about? How do you come to the piece of work? Do you have an idea that you want to make a grasshopper, or do you look at a piece of metal and think, oh, that could be, or whatever? What comes first?
Well, in the early days, it would be the object. So one of the first successful big pieces that I made was a green sea turtle, which was a tractor seat as its shell. That started with this tractor seat. I don't know if anyone can picture one. I can go and get a tractor seat. I've got one over there if anyone wants to see it. But then the more confidence I got, I mean, my early pieces were kind of clumsy compared with what I make now, but I think it's the same with any artistic journey. You start off being able to create a certain amount, and then you just keep pushing and pushing. And when we look at some of the images, there's a few smaller pieces that there's no way I would have even attempted to have made those 20 years ago, whereas now I understand the welding. But the process of welding, I can't really show you too much. This is the welding torch. I can't turn it on because I think the computer's plugged in, but in here is a roll of wire, and it melts this little piece of wire. Here's a bit that's come off, you see that? Yeah. And creates a weld. Now, it's obviously super hot, and if you're trying to weld something that's very thin, you can end up completely melting away the whole of the object you're trying to weld. So there's a certain skill to it, and so that's why it's difficult making smaller pieces. But I always start with a head if I'm making anything. So, for example, that hair that I've just shown you, there's a little hair over here, which is a bit simpler. We can see the pieces in it easier. So this is a little hair. It's a very simple piece. It's almost, it's weird doing it backwards, sorry. Coordination. So you can see in the head, these are spanner heads, and the ears are pliers. So you just start looking. So this is a very simple piece. If you start looking, there's a horseshoe here. Reuben, shush. Sorry, it's Reuben. And you can see that there's all sorts of other pieces. Now, can people see what's in the chest of this hare? Can you see it, David?
The hammer, yeah.
It's a hammerhead, yeah. So you're using these really simple shapes to create this form. And the other thing is there's lots of holes in it. And actually, it's difficult to see in here because there's a really rubbish background with loads of stuff. But when this is against something plain, those empty spaces are actually as important as the field spaces, because this is going to sound arty-farty, but the way that you look at things, often your brain's filling in the gaps. And I think that's what I enjoy so much about these kind of working like this, is that I'm not expecting the viewer to be lazy. Just put this down again. The viewer is actually, their brain is filling in what I'm showing them is being filled in. So although it is made up of horseshoes and bits of ply, everything else, I'm hoping people see a hare first and then start looking for all the bits and bobs in them. Now I'm going to contradict myself now, because this commission here is going to Belgium, and it's a little green sea turtle. And because of the difficulty of making this hard shell, the carapace, I had to make that first, because it's so important to find all the right pieces to make that, because there's no one item that works for this size. So then, once I'd made the shell, I made his head. And if you look, I know you've been trying to make a bicycle today, David, but you can see around his face, to get that scaliness, is one of those little pressed steel bicycle spanners. And if you can look underneath, he's got a little mini shovel. He weighs 6 kilos. He's got to go to Belgium. He's been affected by lockdown. He can't get there. So anyway, that's him. Sorry, it's so weird because it's backwards. There you go. That's the little green sea turtle. I don't know if I've answered the question. I'm babbling now, aren't I?
The question I need to ask as well is, you obviously use bits and pieces of scrap metal. Do you get deliveries of scrap metal, or do you go around looking around dumps and places to find the pieces you need?
That's a good question. I mean, dumps are not really the best place. Certainly not scrap yards, because it tends to be wreckers' yards, and they're full of all cars and lorries and things, and that's all greasy and oily and enormous. So the best place I find is old farmyards and tool sheds and things. And actually, it's really quite sad, but I often get deliveries of things from people who's had an elderly relative or a neighbour that's died, and they think of me and bring along what they've got in the shed, because nobody uses these tools anymore. I mean, I've got so many garden shears, it's almost worth getting the phone and showing you around the studio and looking at these piles of things, because it's chaotic. But on probably 200 different pairs of scissors, all different shapes and sizes, and so basically recently, the last about a year and a half, there's been a stall on our local market, which is only 6 miles away, and it's house clearance sort of tool stall, and they thought I was absolutely nuts because I turned up. I was so excited. I mean, most women get excited about going to clothes shopping or something, probably, but not me. I was just like, I said, oh, how much a pair of pliers? And I can't remember what they said, I don't know, 50p. And I went, well, I'm not paying that, but give me a box and I'll collect some and we'll talk about it. Anyway, I came away that first day with 200 pairs of pliers. So, I've probably, I don't know how many hundreds of pounds I've spent. Well, I do actually. I've spent a lot of money on those stores, but they're brilliant because they completely understand now. They were completely baffled to begin with. But now I can rely on this guy. He just sorts stuff out at source and says, oh, I think I've got something really exciting that you might like. And he's completely excited and interested in looking for stuff for me now, because he understands what I'm making, and he's just it's funny though, and this happens all the time, and I don't mean to be nasty about anybody, but it always amuses me when someone turns up with something and they say, oh, I thought this was a beak, and I look at it and I think there's no way on earth that would ever be a beak, but oh, thank you, that's lovely. But yeah, but I like the fact they're looking. And one of the things I do sometimes with my work with the Society of Wildlife Artists, or just when I've been doing ANF projects, Artists for Nature Foundation projects, is working with kids or anybody really. You can make collages, just use objects, doesn't have to be scrap metal, and you just lay it on the floor and you create an image and you take a photograph, and it makes people understand that what starts off as a pair of scissors could be a beak, or it could be eyes or back legs or whatever, and it's a really creative way. And what's wonderful is if you use the same objects with a group of kids, you can follow an object. So it might have been could have been a flipper in a turtle 1 minute, and then it's become the back leg of a hare in another, or a beak of a heron, who knows. So I really like that. They're no longer labelled as the items that they are, they become part of the creature that you make.
Okay, well, I've heard from Simon Griffiths, who says that you make fellow skips, and Vanilla also says that I should make you climb into a skip. We'll talk about the Society of Wildlife Artists and the Artists for Nature Foundation a bit later, but what I want to do now is just quickly run through some of your pieces. Maybe you can talk us through if I share the screen. But before I do that, okay. Any of you Zoomers want to ask a quick question before? The floor is yours. Anyone? Okay, I will now share the screen, and Harriet will hopefully talk through some of the pieces. And
fingers crossed this will work.
Yeah, it should work. And you can also ask questions during this thing as well. So if you see a piece that interests you, then please feel free to talk about it. So here we are. The first piece is a heron.
Egret.
Was it an egret?
Yeah. Well, it's made of scrap metal, David, so don't worry. Yeah, it's spoon-backed egret, this piece. It was at the Society of Wildlife Artists exhibition last year. I've just collected some random images, particularly of birds, for people to see. So I put this piece in. It's a very recent piece, but I enjoy the balance of it. If you can look at the fact that I've actually got the spreading back claw and the 3 toes of the front foot, and then there's only 1 toe of the back foot that's stopping it toppling over. And also I used silvered pieces, so they're basically steel, but it's got so that's a piece that I particularly like. Oh gosh, there's loads of different questions going on. Is all your work commissioned? Hi Brian. A lot of it is just basically because I think probably for the last 20 years I've never had less than a year's waiting list, so a lot of it is commissioned. So but this egret wasn't. I just fancied I don't know, I just thought, oh, I'll make an egret. So if you want to go on to the next one, David.
Okay, by the way, before I do that, Jane's asking how long do pieces make?
Oh, how long is a piece of string? I've made, how many have I made? I've probably made 5 or 6 life-size horses. So a life-size horse takes 3 months. And some of the smaller pieces might take a couple of days, 3 days. It really depends. Although if you're a proper artist, you'd say it's taken me 50 years, because that's how old I am. So this, excuse the pun, but this is called Shag on a Toolbox. It's not a pun, is it really? But sorry for the terrible, I couldn't resist it. But yeah, this is Shag on a Toolbox. This was a commissioned piece. And I just really like it. I like the negative space, using sickle blades to define the wings. Now, we all know that wing is actually feathers on a bird. They're all coming out of the structure at the top of the wing. But you can be playful making these sculptures and just using that very simple line to define the lower part of the wing, and then having that negative space. Even though it's a black bird, I think it still works. There's another photograph. You want to quickly go on to that one, David? Just of a different view of it. There you go. So, you know, there again, it's a simple piece, but it's so important to find the right objects to define the right item. So that the beak was made out of a pair of pliers, which have a little hooked over handle, and then the lower mandible was another pair of pliers that has this strange little shape on the handle as well. So it just worked. Do you want to go on to the next one? Hi, Sharon. These are all people I know. I sometimes use colour. Some people wonder why I don't paint the sculptures, but I absolutely love the surface of them. And also for me, it would detract from it if I started putting a layer of paint on it. So, for example, we all know the colours of a kingfisher. So, in a way, I could make a sort of ropier version, and if I got the right colours, then it's enough of a shorthand for everyone to know it's a kingfisher, whereas I'd rather try and get the detail correct, the shape of it. So this kingfisher sculpture, you can see just about see on that photograph, there is, I've tried to use pieces that have got some blue paint on them, but anything with paint on it, you have to be very careful. You can't weld it too much, because it gets very, very hot and the paint burns and goes black. So yeah, it's probably twice life-size kingfisher, but it's still pretty small. And these are embroidery scissors for the beak. So if you want to go on to the next one, David. So this is another one that's showing balance like the egret, and there again it's a very, very drawn sculpture. People often ask if I do lots of drawings beforehand, and I absolutely don't. And drawing is wonderful. I'm not, but I don't know what the objects are going to be. So it's the objects that I'm using that ends up dictating how the sculpture is going to be. And what's so marvellous about welding is if I don't like the position of something, I can get my angle grinder and I can cut the piece off and just weld it back on again in a slightly different position. And that's another thing, is you can find the balance by doing that. So if you want to go on to the next one.
Is that pintail?
Yes. So that was a commission for somebody, and there's better photographs of it, but it just, you know, that's the trouble with trying to show 3D work, is you've only got one snapshot. So, you know, that's, there again with this one, I've used silvery things and white things to try and get some plumage detail. And if you look at the feathers on the back, I used calipers for those. So, yeah.
Chris Woodruff is asking, do you put any finishes on your finished work, like a clear coat?
If it's an interior piece, Chris, I tend not to, but the ones that go outside, it's difficult because of course they are going to rust away, so they do need to be treated with something. So the big public art pieces, I advise that they get treated with wax oil, which then gets weathered away, and then you can put more wax oil on it. But it's not an ideal solution because it's not good for, you know, if you had a piece next to a pond, you know, with like any of these kind of treatments and things, they're chemicals, and then it's not overly good. So linseed oil works to an extent, but it starts becoming quite crusty, and you have to sort of get it off before putting more on it. But yeah, I mean, if I was Anthony Gormley, I could use Core 10, which is an amazing steel, which the more rust it gets, the stronger it gets, so it doesn't actually rust beyond the surface layer. But don't have found objects in Core 10. Do you want to go on to the next one? Oh, we've got a cat coming in now. So these, this is a little collection. Now, I sent a little video to you, David. I don't know whether you got that. We probably don't have time to show it, but I was playing around using sickles for wings last year, and I made 3 swifts. And then because we saw one over the house, I then decided to make a hobby. And so each of them have got sickles in the wings. I think I used 15 sickles because I've even used a sickle on the base. So yeah, I really enjoyed making them. They're slightly bigger than life size. Most sculptures end up bigger than life size, but you know, you can imagine trying to get that cute, tiny little beak of a swift. You know, and also using the sickles, that's kinds of dictates the size of the bird. So
it's amazing.
Do you want to go on to the next? They're not designed to go together like that. It's just we took a quick photograph of 2 of them with the hobby, but there are actually 3 swifts in different positions. This is a little robin. There again, a wren. So our swift boxes. So we'd love a sketch. Do you think that would help, Brian? get the swifts into the swift boxes. We're thrilled. We've got 2 pairs in our swift boxes now, so that's fantastic. So, so yeah, if you just want to go on to the next one, David. Now this is called Funnel, and I made it a few years ago for a project that the Society of Wildlife Artists did with the British Trust for Ornithology, talking about the story of migration. It was a brilliant project, and we were looking at birds that breed in the summer here. And so I looked at nightjar, stone curlew, and cuckoos, and a friend of mine just down the road here is doing a very long-term study on reed warblers, so of course he knew where all these cuckoo nests were, and I went off and did some drawings of them and then came back and I thought, how on earth am I going to do this? And I started making the cuckoo chick because that was what I'd been drawing, and we're having some building work done, and the builder was interested in what I was doing, and I was making this cuckoo chick. And he said, H, he says, you're going to have to. So he didn't understand about cuckoos and didn't know how small the host parents could be and all the rest of it. And I showed him a photograph of a reed warbler feeding a cuckoo chick. And he went, H, you're going to have to do the parent, aren't you? And I went, oh, no, you're right. So I did. But it's tiny. The embroidery scissors, I don't think I've got any that are as small as that. So I was really pleased with the way that this piece came out. And I called it Funnel because as far as I'm concerned, I should imagine the reed warblers think that the cuckoo is, you can't fill a cuckoo chick, can you? And if you look, there's a funnel's nest. So there's another photograph. If you go on to the next one, it's a bit closer.
Just before I do that, Elaine Hill's asking, do you alter the shape of the tools, etc., that you use, or do you remain faithful to the existing shape and use them as they are found?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't have a forge, so it's very difficult to bend things that are very heavy, but I do have a high heat builder's torch, which I use for smaller things. So yeah, some things I will bend if they bend, and I've learnt that there are certain thin, cheap bike spanners and stuff that you can bend. So I'm not averse to bending things, but sometimes it doesn't really work very well. So you know, you just have to test it out. So yeah, it's a good question. Next, do you want to go on to the next one? Whatever it is. Oh, you disappeared. My computer. This is another very, very simple one. This is turn. So yeah, you can see it's lots of scissors, and I just really enjoyed that playfulness of the native space, because a lot of my IDing of birds is on plumage colours as well as that shape. But of course, I don't have the colour really, so it's very important to get the shape. But it's interesting with birds because the ones that have particularly big back claws are easier to, we'll look at some more that, you know, I can make them stand up. I hate putting bases on things, but with this position of the turn, it meant it was a tripod again, so I didn't have to worry about sticking it on a base. Do you want to go on to the next one?
Yeah, Brian's asking, have you worked with blacksmiths?
When I was at art college, I had to go on, we fired up the forge and I enjoyed myself, but I ended up with a very short sparkler because I left it in the forge for too long. So no, I haven't worked with blacksmiths. I presume you mean blacksmiths in the true sense of the word, not farriers, because I get loads of horseshoes from my farrier. So no, I haven't. This is an early found object piece, a southern ground hornbill, and as you can see, that it's a life size. They're huge birds. I was lucky enough to see them when I went to South Africa and spent ages drawing them, and I think they're absolutely magnificent. And actually, these kind of ugly species, if we like, you know, that are more, I think they're a lot less cliched. You know, I haven't made a lion yet. I'm not sure I ever would make a lion. I'd much rather make a hyena. And it's the same with these kind of, I've made vultures. I haven't put any photographs on this, but this southern ground hornbill I just think is amazing, and you know, as a species, fascinating and wonderful to draw. So with this, I used a pickaxe head for the lower. I think it's the lower part of the jaw, and the top one's made of sickles. But I don't know if you can see on the photograph on the right-hand side. I was really careful not to let the tail touch the ground, so it's actually supporting itself just on the spread of its claws. So I know it sounds silly, but I like that kind of detail. Do you want to go on to the next one? Oh, and the colour on that hornbill was on pieces I found. I didn't paint it on there. This is a little hoopoo I made. I put it in there for you, David, because I was just thinking of Spanish species. And yeah, and that crest is a really strange thing. It's a gauge for thicknesses of metal. So it's on a little swivel, which obviously is inside the head now, and it made a perfect crest. I just cut down the first 4 blades, and I was really pleased with that piece. Funny enough, I made that for my old art teacher from all those years ago when I was at Tring School. So yeah, it was lovely to do that for her. Do you want to go on to the next one? This is just a little owl that I made that I particularly liked. Spoon little owl. You can see just giving an illusion, alluding to the texture of the plumage on its breast, and using ring spanners for that stare, and just, yeah, I enjoyed making it. There's another view coming up, David, if you want to go to it. There you go, from the side. So that's one of the things about sculpture, and I know Simon Griffiths is on here, and he's a fellow sculptor from the SWLA. He's a very talented ceramicist, and you know, us sculptors have to deal with gravity, which painters, they don't. You know, they can stop at any point and say, well, that's how I want it to be. Whereas we can stop at any point, but it might not stand up, or it might actually cut somebody, or, you know, you'll get another view. And I can't control the view people have of my sculptures. Yeah, do you see what I mean? You know, that anyone could walk in and look at them from any angle, couldn't they? So you're constantly having to look all the way around your sculpture, because inevitably there are going to be a few views that are less successful. But it's very difficult to get the true feeling of a piece from a photograph. So yeah, but I do find the more I look round them and make adjustments and get them looking right from the other direction, the sculpture as a whole. Oh, it's been cancelled.
We're talking about Birdfest. Griffiths is asking.
Oh, okay, sorry. So there you go. Do you want to go on to the next one? This is a difficult one. It's supposed to be a curlew, perhaps its beak's not quite right, but that was a really unusual pair of forceps that I found that opens how the beak would do. I know that sounds really weird, but most forceps would open the other way, like a pair of scissors on that plane. So that's not how a curlew's beak opens. So I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to make another one, but I did enjoy getting the sort of lines of it. So if you want to go on to the next one. But there again, that's Heath that started with an item. So it'd be very, 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 very difficult for me to ever make that again, because I don't know where those forceps came from. I wouldn't even know what sort they're called or what they were used for. But there again, because it doesn't have a long back toe, I've had to think of something to put it on. And I actually really like using shovels and spades as bases, because often, I mean, this is a farmland, well, it likes to use farmland if it's allowed, bird, and I quite like that earth, you know, the idea of a shovel and earth, it seems to kind of work. So I want to go on to the next one. And there's another very gentle piece, carving Fort Lapwing. You know, just very simple items in there. I mean, if we were up close to it, you could see its forehead is a pair of these bullnose, a little part of a pair of bullnose pliers, and you know, just using simple shapes. You know, I know there's more detail in a wing than I've managed to achieve there, but somehow you don't need to be fussy. And I think that's what often, for me, poor work that's using wildlife as a theme is where people put too much detail, or they start, you know, getting completely enthralled in creating feathers, when actually, when you see a bird, and you know this, David, when you see a bird, you see its mass. You know it's got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of feathers on it, but you don't see every feather. And people get really stuck on this, and it just makes them fussy, and also the birds look ill if they put too many feathers on them. And I saw the interview you had with Lars Johnson, and he was saying the same, is people paint what they think they can see. And you know, I think sometimes you need to simplify to capture more of the essence. So if you want to go on to the next one, that's another view of it, and you can see that is on one foot, and it's a very thin leg, and it's just a lightness you can do using steel. I just love it. You can go on to the next one. Oh, I've forgotten about all these. I just threw them away. So this is a black grouse. Now, this is one of the few sculptures I did actually put some colour on myself. So the red is not put on by me, but if you look at the other view of it, actually, if you go on to the next one, you can see I used circular saw blades. Oh, go back one. I used circular saw blades, and I actually ended up using some white spray paint on them to get that idea of the plumage.
Yeah.
I think the cat's going to knock my camera off in a minute. Oi, what are you doing?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Harry.
Oh, we
I
can't go backwards.
So I've gone too far forward now.
Yeah, never mind. So we had a very brief view of a Pallas's cormorant, which is an extinct species. And this is another extinct species. So this is a King Island emu. And so I made these pieces for an exhibition that was set up to highlight extinct birds. And it was really exciting thing to be involved with, because it wasn't wildlife artists, it was all sorts of people, artistic, creative people, and people who aren't necessarily known for painting. I mean, Margaret Atwood, the writer, knitted an extinct bird. I think she knitted an auk. And what are you doing, Twigs? It was had sort of more avant-garde artists and people that were from completely different areas to wildlife, and it was a really exciting thing to be involved with. So we were given the red data list of birds that of extinct birds, and so I chose to do this King Island emu, and and also the Pallas's cormorant, which actually put on a wok rock because it was eaten to death, because it did fly but not very well, and it was very important food stuff, quite tasty, so it just got eaten by explorers up that area, and Russian people stopping up in their boats to eat. So this emu, I think, became extinct because of introduced species on an island, as is often the case with endemic island species. So I particularly like this because it's a huge sculpture. I mean, I can't remember how big it is, probably 4.5 feet tall or something like that. And as you know, emus have really strange feet, and I managed to get it to stand up without a base. But it's got a stupid name because the exhibition was called Ghosts of Gone Birds. And I don't know if you can see in the neck, it's very difficult to spot, but there's actually a rotary mower sort of cylinder in there. And I called it Ghost of an Emu, Ghost of a Mower. Is anyone groaning? But anyway, if you know about birds, there's an extinct species called a mower, M-O-A. But this is spelled M-O-W-E-R. But there you go. Anyway, do you want to go on to the next one? All my sculptures have the title, there's nearly all of them has something to do with a piece that's in them. So this is doe hoe roe. So it's the doe roe deer, but it's got big hose in it. Oh, crikey, there's some questions.
Yeah, let me ask them in case. Hello? Oh.
Hello?
Harriet, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, Jane's asking, what sort of setting do most of your pieces end up in? Are they mainly outside?
The big pieces would have to be outside. I mean, this piece, for example, I don't know who it went to because it was sold through the Society of Wildlife Artists exhibition last year. But, you know, it's a life-size roe deer, so I suspect it's out in some gardens or grounds. The big public art pieces, I know the settings that they go into, like the life-sized plough horse that I made 3 years ago, I think it was. That's at Somerset Rural Life Museum. I haven't put a photograph of that on here because it's not a bird. But yeah, I think most of them tend to go into interior settings, the smaller pieces. But if I'm being commissioned, I do try and ask whether it's going to go indoors or outdoors, because there's some items that's just not worth. It's not worth using them on an exterior piece, because you know some of these thinner pieces of steel wouldn't last.
Yeah.
I know the doe's not a bird either, but at least it's wildlife.
We don't mind here. We have no prejudice. No. Which is your favourite sculpture? Basically, that's what Brian's asking.
Oh, I haven't put a photograph on there, but the vulture that I made must be 10, 12 years ago. It was a particularly pivotal piece because it didn't have a home to go to. I just made this vulture in all its vulturey glory, and I took it to the bird fair, and a dear friend of mine, I'd mentioned that I was making a vulture to go to the Society of Wildlife Artists, and he said, a vulture? Who's going to buy a vulture? And I took it to the bird fair, and it sold within the first hour of it being at the bird fair, even though it was a really substantial life-size vulture. And not that it makes a difference, but what the point was that sometimes you just need to make what you need to make. You don't need to worry about whether it's going to sell. That's the point I'm making, I think. And as I said earlier, I just love looking at creatures that are perhaps overlooked, you know, the less magnificent things, you know, just looking at things in detail. Like, I think if we go on to the next image, for example, insects. I mean, this is a damselfly made out of an egg whisk and an old drill bit and things. And when you start looking at insects up close, they're just amazing bits of engineering. And I have such a love of exploring these things that, you know, I don't, perhaps a damselfly is rather a beautiful thing, but, you know, if you start looking at a humble woodlouse, it's an amazing
Yeah, we seem to be having a bit of problem with Harriet. Can you hear us, Harriet, or hear me? Harriet? Harriet? Okay, whilst we're waiting for Harriet to come back, let me just quickly tell you that she was elected as a member of the Society of Wildlife Artists almost.
So yeah, I'm the fronds of the board to just give that delicacy of things that get overlooked. I think it's there, and you know, I think that's something that people would have learned from lockdown. Actually, is there's so much on your doorstep. I can just about hear you now, David.
Yeah, I've not said anything, but anyway, carry on.
There you go. Do you want to go on to the next one?
Okay, you don't talk about this one, the outdoor one with the fish.
Oh, I can't see the fish.
We've got the outdoor one with the shoal of fish has been chased by a pike.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that was a commission. Is a memorial to somebody. There it is. And I could have put more images on there, but basically I made the pike, and it was supposed to be a collection of course. This chap loved course fishing, and so I thought, well, it's going to be a pike, and then I thought, wouldn't it be nice to put something that the pike's looking at? And I got a little bit carried away, and I think there's 23 fish in. I can hear all the swifts outside. There's a screaming party of swifts coming past the door, and so yeah, I've made trout, and I think I made bream and things I put in there. But anyway, for my sculptures, they're standalone things. The cuckoo and the reed warbler is another exception to this. But what I enjoyed about this was trying to give the idea of, you know, when you see the river and the current and the flow, and fish always face up the current when they're, but also you end up with the water weed and stuff, when it hits the surface gets bent back. And I really like the fact that somehow you get that feeling that this is in a little part of a river, and there is a slight sense of trepidation that the pike's going to get eaten, it gets its dinner. But the other thing is, a lot of the items that are in that came from the farm where it's set. So it's a dairy farm in the Somerset Levels, the Pevensey Levels in East Sussex, and they use this sort of screw-like structure to feed the cattle, you know, when they come in to the dairy, and they'd replaced it. And I said about blacksmiths, but I went down to see a friend of mine who's got a forge, and I heated all these up and pulled them out. So yes, I have used a blacksmith's forge, but not really. So that's what I made the reeds out of, the water weeds out of. And also the centre of the pike has got it all the way down. So. But it's a big pike, it's about 4 foot long. Do you want to go on to the next one? I don't think it's much. That's it. I think that's the last. Is that the last one?
No idea.
Probably. But anyway, just to show that I do make bigger pieces. That's wildlife. This is an adult giraffe, but it's not life size, as you can see. But it was still pretty tall. So that's hammerhead giraffe, which I made a few years ago. So yeah. But there again, it's all found objects. So hammer-horned giraffe. So I think that's the last one, isn't it?
Yeah, Mark Thompson's just asked, how do you price your work? Is it
Oh no, there's a bee. I don't think it's obviously it's unique. So we shouldn't get distracted. I price my work from the point of view of how many I can make in a year, plus its kind of size and the amount of time it's I've spent on it. It's a whole combination. It's quite a difficult thing. And stuff. There's always commissions, so yeah, you know, you've got to think about that, and also how many, you know, where it's not like you're looking at an auto trader and you're looking for a Ford Focus that's done this amount. There aren't lots of them out there, so you have to value yourself, and that's actually a tough thing for artists. And at the SWLA we see quite a combination of people who either completely overprice their work for where they are, or they don't value it enough in a way. So this was a little bee I made, I think it was last year, which is quite fun. I happened to find those vine scissors. Can you see in the wings? So those are different calipers that just happened. I didn't bend that one with that strange kink in it, and because it's really difficult to try and work out how to do wings of things because they have to kind of match. So you need to find all the right bits. So yeah, that was a bee that I made for somebody. So I think that's the last one, or is it?
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. That was great. Anyone with any further questions here in the Zoom room? No?
I've got flipping animals in here. There's a cat and there's a dog and there's a. Oh.
Okay, well, listen, Harriet, can you briefly tell us about your involvement with the Society of the Wildlife Artists? Did you hear me?
Yes, you asked about the Society of Wildlife Artists.
Yeah, your involvement.
Well, that was set up. Oh, it was set up. Say that again.
I was asking about your involvement with the Society of Wildlife Artists, and if you can explain who they are.
Well, the Society of Wildlife Artists was set up in 1964, I think it was, and it was originally to show bird art, because back in the 1960s and 50s and 60s, most art that involved wildlife was kind of hunting, the sports scenes, as it were. And Robert Gilmore, who's still very much a key member of the society, him and some other amazing artists, Eric Enyon and John Busby, and you know there were a real stalwart collection. Decided to set up this exhibition, Birds in Art, and it proved a huge success. It was shown in London, and then it managed to tour. And they realised that there was actually an opportunity here to create a group who had this common interest and common theme that wasn't necessarily sporting art. So yeah, and so here we are down the line. I think I've been president now for over 10 years, and it's has an annual exhibition in London, but also we give out bursaries to emerging artists, and just, I don't know, work with NGOs. So we've done projects over the years with the Forestry Commission and the RSPB, the BTO. I mentioned the For Light Lines project. And in fact, a couple of weeks ago, I would have been in Denmark because we would have been the second part of a big project we've got in the Wadden which is an amazing area for birds, as I'm sure you know, David. So yeah, we've kind of used, I mean, we work with lots, I mean, wildlife trusts and all sorts of people. And I think what I find heartening is that these organisations understand that sometimes when it comes to communication to an audience, actually having a different way of looking, a different way of presenting these areas that need awareness or help or just celebration, that art can do that in a very different way to photography or you know, just talking about them. So So, you know, I'm really proud of what we've managed to do, and also the number of bursaries that we've handed out to people who've ended up a lot of the time becoming full members. So that kind of help of young artists is really brilliant. So,
can you also explain your connection with the Artists for Nature Foundation? What's that?
Well, the Artists for Nature Foundation is an amazing organisation that's there again. I think that's been going 30 years, I think. And so basically that's international artists. So they've gone all over the place. They've gone to Peru and India and Alaska and all these amazing places. And I remember the first time I got asked, it was such an accolade. And I was really excited and actually very scared because they're amazing. I mean, Lars Johnson and Darren Woodhead, all sorts of people, you know, go on these. And I don't really work in the field. You know, I can't take a welder out with me and sit in a bush welding because you wouldn't see many birds, would you, for a start, and there's no electricity. So it was quite intimidating. So the first place I was, where are we going to be going? You know, the last place they'd been to was Peru, and they'd been to, and it was hilarious because we went to the Great Fen Project, which is about 40 miles away from me here in East Anglia, but actually that worked really, really well because it meant that I could be kind of into it, as it were, and end up feeling more comfortable in this collection of intimidating artists who are all wonderful and beautiful, you know, lovely people, but it's still, you know, when you see Chris Rose and working away, you just think, oh my goodness, you know, where do I go from here? In fact, I've got a couple of the books behind me here which I can show you. I've got a few of them. I've actually brought a sketchbook with me as well, so yeah. I mean, these are never kept in the studio, the same way as my computer would never be in here, because one of the themes in the studio is absolutely filthy. So that's the Flight Lines book, which is still, you know, a great book. I mean, just because some of the artists went to Senegal, there were 4 artists sent to Senegal to look at the wintering grounds of, you know, sub-Saharan African wintering grounds of those birds, and it really brought it to life. You know, these drawings of birds. So that was a different project. That's not an ANF project, but these drawings of birds with monitor lizards near them. We don't think of our swallows having to go and sit in an acacia bush and worry about whether they're going to get nabbed by a monitor lizard. It's just sometimes those kind of things really help put things into perspective. And this was an ANF project to Israel, which I went on, which was brilliant. So all these places I go to, I end up having to have a workshop set up. So I end up being a real diva because I need the right kind of welder, and I need 2 angle grinders, and I need all this, and I need to go and look for scrap and everything else. So that's what happened in Denmark last year. So when we do get to go back for the second project, I know they know exactly what I need now. But it's brilliant being in other people's workshops, and you actually I went to SARC on the Channel Lines as well, and that was brilliant because SARC epitomises, this was an ANF project. So these beautiful books are created after the ANF projects, but SARC epitomises my whole life, because when you're on an island, you don't throw things away, you keep them just in case you can mend something with it. So it was the most wonderful place for finding scrap and old tools. It was just absolutely brilliant. I made lots of pieces when I was on SARC. So yeah, but the ANF are amazing, and the work they've done and the trips they've been on, and bringing this artist community into these areas of conservation concern, and actually working alongside artists from those areas as well is, you know, it's a great thing.
Fantastic. Now listen, we've come to the stage in the night where it kind of officially ends in a few minutes. So all you fellow Zoomers, worry not, because we're going to have a little bit of an after show party after the official end, where you can ask your question. We know Beverly's got a question, and so has Brian, and maybe some more people might as well. So I need to ask you, Harriet, 2 more questions. Firstly, what is your favourite bird? It's a very sort of, well, what is your favourite bird?
Well, it's actually quite a cheesy answer, because I know for a fact lots of people say this bird, but for me it's extraordinarily pertinent, and it's a swift, because Dad set up, we lived in a rented house. The house that me and my younger sister were both born in was it was a little rented house in Tring in Hertfordshire that Mum and Dad moved into, and it was still furnished because the chap who had it had died, and he'd left it to this organisation, still with all the, you know, there was even the bit of corned beef that he'd opened 6 months before was still in the larder. So this is in the 1960s. But anyway, Dad took bricks out of the end gable of this house without properly talking to the landlords probably, and set up and established a swift colony. So us three girls, we used to have that feeling of going up into the loft with that hot, you know, it's always hot in attics in the summer, and the thrill of rummaging through all this stuff that was up there and then getting to where the bricks were, and Dad would ring the chicks and look and see what birds are in there. And so swifts are just so, and also Dad's birthday is the 1st of May, and there's a funny little story. It's not funny, it's kind of like, you can be a little bit emotional about it, but the scientific side of me knows why it happened. But so Dad died 17 years ago, and we've never had swifts nesting here in this house, and Dad had lived here for 13 years. And anyway, the year that Dad died, he died in the January, and then on his birthday was the day we saw the first swift over the house. So that's just, it happens to be that time of year. But then it was the first year they ever nested in this roof. But the scientific side of me was that the pub over the road had been re-roofed so that they couldn't have access, so they looked elsewhere. But we've had swifts here ever since. So yeah, swift for me has to be.
You could be anywhere in this world, COVID-19 notwithstanding, where would it be right now? Where would you be? If you could be anywhere in this world right now, where would you
be? This is going to sound really cheesy, but here. I think there's a lot to be learned by embracing and loving where you are, and actually going away to places I do enjoy, but I almost feel bereft that I've missed a chunk of the season here.
Okay. All right. Well, listen, before we close the official part of this In Conservation Way, let me just tell you that tomorrow night, guys...
I can't hear.
Well, I'm talking to everyone anyway. So, yeah. But basically, tomorrow night we've got Miriam Darlington at the same time, 7 o'clock.
Oh, Miriam, lovely.
She's an author.
Otter country.
Exactly, and also our sense. So she'll be talking about, you know, her insight as a nature writer. On Friday we've got Stephen Moss, who is a producer, or was a producer for BBC, responsible for getting Bill Oddie.
Know him as well.
Responsible for getting Bill Oddie on The Birder. He'll be talking about the basics of nature writing, because he writes a book every 2 minutes. And on Sunday, we have the godfather of all the bird fairs. We've got Tim Appleton on, so he'll be talking about bird fairs and all that sort of stuff. So the official end is here. Harriet, thank you very much. It's been amazing to see your work and to experience some of the things you've talked about. And thank you all Zoomers for being here. Look forward to seeing you again, and keep looking up.